The morning began like any other inside ADX Florence, the most secure prison in America, but what happened next was something even the guards would never forget. The entire facility fell silent. No footsteps, no talking, no metal doors slamming. Then, from deep within cell block H, a voice began to echo through the ventilation system. It was calm, steady, and unmistakably familiar. "Do you remember me?" the voice asked. The guards froze. That voice belonged to one of the most famous inmates ever held in the prison's history. A man whose very name sent shivers through law enforcement for decades, Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber. But Ted had died months ago. Or at least, that's what the official report said. Before anyone could react, the lights began to flicker. One by one, the cameras went dark. For a moment, ADX Florence, the Alcatraz of the Rockies, known for never losing control, became a place of chaos and whispers. Inside one of the nearby cells, another inmate, Joaquin El Chapo Guzman, sat quietly on his bunk, smirking in the dim red emergency light. The guards rushed through the corridors, shouting orders as the emergency backup system powered on. The monitors in the control room flashed between static and cell feeds. Then one screen showed something that made the warden's heart stop. Cell 234, where Ted Kaczynski had once been held, now had movement inside. That was the moment every man in the prison, inmate or officer, realized something about ADX Florence. No one ever truly left. Months earlier, when El Chapo had been flown in from New York after his final trial, the media called it the end of an era. The Mexican drug lord had escaped maximum security prisons before, but this was different. Here, there were no tunnels, no bribes, and no mistakes. From the first day, he was treated like a ghost. No contact with other inmates, no sound beyond his own breathing. Cameras tracked every movement he made, even the way he blinked. His cell had concrete walls so thick that not even a whisper could escape. The only time he saw daylight was for 1 hour in a fenced cage, where the sky looked like a small square of blue trapped behind steel. Across the hall, other names that once dominated headlines sat quietly in isolation. Ramzi Youssef, the mastermind behind the 1993 World Trade Center bombing, was in another cell, often muttering to himself. Down another corridor, Terry Nichols, one of the men behind the Oklahoma City bombing, kept a small collection of legal papers, reading them over and over as if searching for something he had lost years ago. Each man in ADX had a story, and every story was sealed behind steel and silence. Guards described the place as a prison built for ghosts. There were no riots, no fights, not even the sound of footsteps in the night. Just cameras, sensors, and the endless hum of air vents. One young officer, Daniel Hayes, had only been at ADX for 6 months when he began to notice something strange. During his night shifts, he would pass the Unabomber's old cell, cell 234, and hear faint tapping. Not the kind that echoed from pipes or heaters, but rhythmic, deliberate. When he asked about it, a senior guard told him, "Ignore it. The walls remember too much here." But Daniel couldn't ignore it. One night, while making his rounds, he saw El Chapo sitting completely still, staring at the vent above his head. His eyes followed something Daniel couldn't see. "You hear it too," El Chapo whispered. Daniel froze. "He talks to me through the walls," the inmate said with a calm grin. "He says we'll never get out." "Not him. Not me. Not you." Before Daniel could respond, the lights went out. The alarms blared. That was the same moment cell block H came alive again, and the Unabomber's voice echoed through the vents for the first time since his reported death. The guards ran. Doors slammed. Red lights filled the hallways. El Chapo stood at his small window, watching the searchlights move outside in the snow. And then he smiled. Because for the first time since arriving at ADX Florence, it seemed even the walls weren't sure who was in control anymore. The alarms kept screaming across ADX Florence, bouncing off the thick concrete walls like thunder. Every corridor glowed red under flashing emergency lights. Guards ran towards cell block H while the warden barked orders through the radio. But nothing made sense. Every camera feed in the block had gone black. The supermax prison built to control the most dangerous minds in America was now blind. Inside his solitary cell, El Chapo sat motionless, listening. The faint voice that had returned through the vents seemed to whisper from every direction at once. "You can lock the body," it said softly, but not the thought. El Chapo tilted his head, amused. "Is that you, Ted?" he whispered back, though he knew no one could hear him, not with 3 feet of concrete around his cell. But still, the voice continued. Down the hallway, Daniel Hayes, the young guard, was clutching his flashlight. The control panels beside him flickered between red and blue, systems rebooting in loops. The other officers looked pale, muttering to themselves. Daniel, still shaken from what El Chapo had said earlier, decided to do something reckless. He walked towards cell 234, the Unabomber's former cell. The air felt heavy there, colder somehow. His flashlight beam wobbled over the steel door. He pressed his ear close and listened. The tapping had returned, steady and rhythmic, like a code. 3 taps, pause, 2 taps, pause, 3 again. It wasn't random. It was Morse code. Daniel hurried back to the control room, digging through the system logs. When he typed in the pattern, the letters that appeared on the monitor made his blood run cold. "Still here." The warden shouted for power to be restored, but before Daniel could explain, a low rumble shook the floor. The cameras blinked to life. Only now, the monitors showed something strange. Inmates across multiple blocks were standing silently, all looking up toward the vents, as if listening to something. Even the most isolated prisoners, men like Ramsey Youssef, Terry Nichols, and Richard Reed, the so-called shoe bomber, stood frozen in eerie unison. None of them had seen or spoken to each other in years. Yet they all moved the same way. The warden yelled, "Shut down all air circulation units, now." But it was too late. The whispering had spread. From one end of ADX Florence to the other, a chilling voice filled the vents. "You built a place with no escape," it said, "and forgot that minds can still roam free." Daniel watched in disbelief as the prisoners began to hum softly, different voices, same low note. The noise merged into a single vibration that made the lights flicker again. Guards covered their ears, shouting orders that no one could hear. Inside his cell, El Chapo leaned against the wall, smiling faintly. "Finally," he murmured, "the walls talk back." Hours later, when power was restored, everything seemed to return to normal. The humming stopped. The inmates were calm again, most of them sitting on their bunks as if nothing had happened. But something about the air felt different, like the entire building had exhaled after holding its breath. In the control room, Daniel replayed the footage from the power outage. For a few seconds, one camera, just one, had recorded something impossible. Cell 234. A figure standing where no one should have been. The video was grainy, the light dim, but Daniel could see the outline of a man in an old beige prison uniform. The timestamp matched the exact moment the tapping stopped. When the image froze, Daniel noticed a faint smile on the man's face. He zoomed in. On the wall behind the figure, scratched deep into the concrete, were 2 words, "No escape." The next morning, the warden declared the entire incident a system malfunction. Files were erased. Reports locked away. Guards were ordered never to speak about it again. But that night, Daniel made one last round through cell block H. He passed El Chapo's cell, empty eyes staring back at him. "Still think this place can hold anyone?" El Chapo asked quietly, his tone almost playful. Daniel didn't answer. When he reached cell 234, he stopped. The lights were dim. The door was cold to the touch. As he turned to leave, he heard 3 soft taps echo through the vent again. 3, pause, 3. Daniel looked up at the ceiling, eyes wide, whispering, "Still here." Outside, under the dark Colorado sky, ADX Florence stood as silent and unshaken as ever, a fortress built to contain the worst of humanity. But deep within its walls, one truth remained. You can lock every door, seal every vent, and silence every name. But you can never shut down the voices that refuse to die.